Hi everyone and welcome to the Power 365 show. I'm really pleased to introduce Chris Huntingford, one of the newest MVPs on the block and a Dynamics 365 pre-sale solution architect at Hitachi Solutions in London. Chris is all about exposing the awesomeness of Microsoft Dynamics 365 customer engagement, product evangelism, and spreading the Dynamics 365 message. Today we're going to be discussing, though, all things the Microsoft Power Platform. What is it? What are the changes? What's the difference between Canvas and model-driven apps? Things like that. But anyhow, let's just hear from him and get on with the show. Hey Chris, welcome to the Power 365 show.
Hey Mark, what's happening? How are you?
Good. Well, it's good to finally get you on here. I tell you, I've played so much email tag with you. I don't know what you've got going on with your email, but it seems to get lost in your spam. Even your MVP award got lost in your spam. You didn't seem to be able to find it.
That's pretty much on the money. I've got to get it sorted out. I think it's you know what? For now, let's just blame Gmail.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that. So, Chris, you originally came from South Africa and have been living in London since 2014. Can you tell us about how your career how did you get into Dynamics? How did you get to the UK? And then your type transition to this wonderful world of PowerApps?
Sure. It's a bit of a weird one. So, I'm actually an ex-Delphi/Borland developer. And I was working at Borland. I ended up moving into freight and logistics, ran my own company for about 3 years on the coast of South Africa. And the person that I was working with, one of my mentors, actually ended up at a Dynamics Gold partner. And I was like, okay. And she called me up. She said, hey, you've got to see the stuff that I'm working on. So I was like, all right, cool. Now, got to remember, I'm used to connecting front end to back end databases and, meddling around in the database. And she's like, no, you don't do any of that. You build it all within the front end. And this was CRM3. So I had a look at the stuff. I was blown away. I was like, man, this is brilliant. So went for an interview at a place called IS Partners, which is now Carabiner Solutions.
Oh, yeah, I know them.
Yeah, they're brilliant. So they gave me a job doing sort of support and maintenance work. I didn't know Dynamics at all. And basically learn on the job. So they were like, well, go to this customer and do something. Fix A, B, and C. And I did. Learned all about iframes and all those wonderful things. And was blown away. The first thing you do when you move from a world of back-end DB administration to something like this is you just want to meddle in the database. And it's like, what is this sorcery? So yeah, it was really cool. Loved the product, moved over from support and maintenance. I was in that position for about 2.5 years. I moved into a pre-sales role where they mentored me into they taught me how to demo. They taught me all these sort of different sales processes and procedures. And I've actually been doing that for about 7 years. With no desire to move off onto anything else, purely because of the fact that I love doing it. But yeah, was a Caribbean. I was there for 5.5 years. I basically said to them, look, I love working here, and I did. And if I ever went back to South Africa, I'd go and work for them.
Is that right?
But, yeah, absolutely. But in the UK, I just wanted to go and do something different, and I wanted to see the world. So applied at one of my friends had moved over to the UK. He basically said, come and work for this company. We'll call them Company X. I moved over. It was cool, but just not really for me. And it's the only time I've ever stayed at a company for less than 3 months. But I just kind of knew it wasn't the right thing. Interviewed at Hitachi. And they were like, well, come and join us. So I did. And I've just been learning and growing. And they've really provided me with a base to kind of get access to information, access to Microsoft, and also access to the rest of the people in the channel, like your good self. So that's kind of the move. It was the best move I've ever made. Moving from South Africa to the UK completely changed my career.
Mm-hmm. How did your family handle or like the move?
So we didn't have kiddies yet. So essentially what happened was I said to my wife, look, I'm keen on doing this. She loved the idea immediately, purely because of the fact that in South Africa, it's really difficult to travel. Obviously within South Africa, it's easy, but to the rest of the world, it's quite expensive. So she was cool. I moved over, with one bag. Literally, I didn't bring anything with me other than a bag. Yeah, and I just, missioned around and got to know people. I started blogging as soon as I got here. And it's been really good. She loved it. My wife absolutely loved it. And she's actually getting involved in Dynamics as we speak.
Wow. Keeping it in the family, so to speak.
That's it, man. I'm going to teach my daughter how to code as soon as she can.
So what's the best thing about pre-sales? You said you love being in this kind of role. What do you love about it? What spins your wheels in pre-sales?
Okay, so my world in pre-sales is probably different to everyone else's. Everyone else thinks that, well, a lot of people assume pre-sales are the guys that just rock up and do demos and, demo dolly type stuff. In my world, it's a very different thing. I do everything from marketing to pre-sales to sales to actual support to delivery. I actually delivered a project quite recently with PowerApps. And that's my world of pre-sales. I see pre-sales as dabbling in absolutely everything possible, motivating people. But also, the thing that I love about it is that I'm not stuck to one customer for like 10 months. So I can go ahead and I can have a kind of wafer thin influence in loads of different deals and really get stuck in and learn loads of things. So at any point, I could be working on 20 different things. And the technologies are all different. Obviously, it's all within the Microsoft stack, but one customer might be a field services customer. The other customer might be purely model-driven apps for lead generation. So it's totally different, but it appeals to my squirrely nature.
Nice, nice, nice. So I see you kind of adopt the title of product evangelist and enthusiast and things like this. And, I would say I've probably had the evangelist hat on across my career as well. But what does this evangelist type title really mean?
Yeah. So let me ask you a question, Mark. You've got loads of hobbies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I've got hobbies. And when I get into a conversation with somebody, I end up inevitably talking about my hobby at some point. So
Yeah.
the example I give is I play drums. And at some point in a conversation, somebody will ask me, well, what do you do? And I'm like, I do this, that, and I play drums or play guitar. And I'm passionate about it. Dynamics for me is a hobby. Okay. So I'm quite lucky in the fact that, yes, it's my job, but I also really enjoy the concepts of problem solving with it. And because of that, it's become something that I like to talk to people about. And I feel like I'm an evangelist because I treat everyone like a customer. So whether it's you, whether it's some dude in the pub, whether it's an actual customer buying something from me, I always like to talk about it. I mean, when I have conversations about social, I start waffling on about social engagement and what it can do for you. And I like to feel like my enthusiastic side really pushes me to evangelize the product and to talk to people about why it can help them. Not essentially what it does, but why it's there. And
Are you talking about Microsoft social engagement?
I'm talking about anything as far as the Microsoft product stack goes.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah,
And even Power Platform, I'll explain to you a little later, but it's really important to understand, why the products are there, what they do, and why they're interesting to me. And I found that through my career, as my career has gone, that's sort of become more of a forefront thing. So when I get to a customer, and I do it subconsciously, I find myself really trying to understand what their issue is and how we can solve it with the Microsoft product stack. So that's why I feel like I'm an evangelist. I hope I live up to the title.
Nice. So you just become an MVP. Tell me, what was that like? Has it changed anything?
Oh man, this is a weird. It's been a weird journey for me because I'm such an emotional dude. I take stuff really personally, and what happened was when I was nominated, I was really excited, and I was excited throughout the whole thing. But I found myself doing stuff to become an MVP. And I don't really think that that's what it's about, right? So, and I mean, I'd spoken to you and Sarah and a bunch of other folks, but I wasn't sure if it was the right thing for me because I couldn't say, oh, I'm going to absolutely be able to contribute 16 times a month, whatever. Yeah. And I didn't really want it to be about that. So,
No.
I started to get a bit down about the fact that, I didn't know how the contributions were being recognized and what you were supposed to actually be doing. So I just thought, well, screw it. I'm just going to carry on doing what I enjoy. And
Exactly.
that's exactly what I did. Like we hosted hackathons. Kyle, Will, and I started up those Dynamics guys. And our goal was just to get people together, really. And, enjoy the stuff that we enjoy. And it just so happens that there are lots of folks out there. So when I started doing that and stopped caring about, well, how many contributions am I adding every month? it just landed up in my inbox. I mean, I didn't even know that the email was there. I had to be told.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
So it's been awesome. Obviously, thanks to you guys for the advice and all the the providing direction, especially you, Joel, Sean, and Sarah. But it's been really good because yes, it has opened doors. To be honest, a lot of stuff hasn't really changed from the technical aspect, but what has changed for me was access to people. And the recognition's amazing, and obviously you can't say no to that, right? But it's access to people and access to different channels, and the other MVPs have been massively helpful. So for me, that's been, not that they weren't before, it's just It's more so now that I have other channels to access them on,
Yeah. I think Amex had a tagline, membership has its benefits.
Yeah.
And really, you never understand until you become an MVP just what those benefits, the intangible nature of them, but just how beneficial they are as well. So, yeah, so good.
On the money, yeah.
Anyhow, let's get down to talking business. And what I mean by that is I want to talk around PowerApps. And I want to kind of get a couple of definitions off you before we get going, because there's been a lot of confusion in the market around the Power Platform was a word that got coined around, March, April this year. And then, we've heard PowerApps for the last 2 years. Heck, what was the name before it was called PowerApps? There was
Project
another name
Sienna.
for it. Yeah, Project Sienna, that's right. Yeah. So, it's been on the boil for at least 4 years, the whole, starting back then. And then we've got this new terminology around, oh no, that's Canvas apps, or that's model-driven apps, and it's not XRM, and we've got a CDM, and we've got a common data model and common data services, right? So let's just unpack some of those. So first of all, what is, in your words, a common data model?
Okay, so the common data model is a model of kind of standard entities or tables that exists like sort of across the Power Platform. So essentially, if you think about like currently in Dynamics, and I don't really want to make the correlation, but I'm going to. You have like accounts, contacts, etc. These are common entities or common entity structures that can be used sort of across the common data, across Power Platform. So that it's really about you can build an app and you can build app A and you can access the account entity through the common data service, right? The account entity exists in the common data model, and that's also accessible through a Canvas app, right? So that's sort of where the model of where your actual data sits and lives.
Okay, so if we're saying the common data model is really, if we go looking at 4 different buckets, they are people that work for an organization, customer of those organizations, products of those organizations, and maybe the operations of those organizations.
Pretty much.
Do they kind of all sit within that common data model here? They're kind of terminology that no matter what type of business that you're in, those type of entities and collections of data exist.
Yeah, absolutely. So
okay, cool. That makes sense. Yep. What were you going to say?
No, don't worry. You see, yeah, I would have ended up in some long-winded elaboration about but also it's you're on the money. You're on the money.
Okay, so then if we consider common data service, so put data model to one side and put the apps, how would you articulate the term common data service?
So the service I see is the middle layer that supplies the actual data to the apps. That's how I perceive it. So if you think about the service is the way that the data is essentially translated towards the application itself. Yeah, that's my perception of it. And I got really confused in the beginning because I was like, well, what does the actual models do and what does the service do? And I always see as the model is like the actual core structure, and then the service is the mechanism to supply the data within that core structure.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay, so now we've got this terminology called the Microsoft Power Platform, which is the new kind of branding that we're seeing going forward. How would you typically explain the Microsoft Power Platform?
Okay, so I explain the Power Platform as a combination of PowerApps, Microsoft Flow, and PowerApps, Microsoft Flow, and I've just lost the last one.
Power BI.
Power BI, that's the one, sorry. Yeah, and I kind of see it as the combination of those three, right? And that combination forms the Power Platform, where it really gives a user the ability to generate sort of their own business applications within the Power Platform, right? What I've seen before is that, and this is I actually put this as a question towards a couple of folks a while back. A lot of people perceive as like a Canvas app as Power Platform, and when you speak about Power Platform, the first thing that comes to mind is a Canvas app, and that's not the case. Yeah, it's a combination of all these different sort of functions or modules that form the Power Platform. So when you say Power Apps, you're looking at things like model-driven apps and Canvas apps. When you're saying Power Platform, you're including Power BI and Microsoft Flow within that, and obviously the common data service.
Yeah. So if I wanted to learn the Power Platform, It's not that I would go out and do like the app in a day, or, up on, I think it's EDX, there's a course on PowerApps. That's not the Power Platform you're telling me. That's Canvas
No,
apps.
that's Canvas apps. Yeah. It's really important to understand that learning like app in a day, it's a really great course, and it works really well. But for me, I kind of feel as if, that's just a piece of it. There's so much more to it than just that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So part of this call, I've agreed to, you've requested that I take the devil's advocate approach on some things. He didn't request, I suggested that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it though.
and so here's my first one about the story. And, I'm very pro Microsoft, been working, with their technology for 20 years, 15 years in this dynamic space. But the Power Platform and the fact that Power BI in there, it's nice on a graphic, it's nice for marketing, but at the moment, the limit of our Power BI experience in the first-party apps of Dynamics, let alone maybe Canvas apps a little different, but from a model-driven perspective, apart from a personal dashboard, where else does it exist?
What, from a Power BI perspective?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, as in from an embedded perspective, as in going to form, seeing the Power BI chart on a form at a system level, not a user level.
Oh, for sure. I mean, look, and you can access this through the Canvas apps if you needed to. So what I've done before, and actually I'll be showing this off in Stockholm this weekend, is we stuck together a sort of roadside assist application, and obviously you've got your embedded Power BI dashboard, from a user perspective, right?
Yeah. So that you're talking about personal.
Yeah,
personal.
so absolutely. Yep. Yeah. So from a personal perspective, you've got your Power BI dashboard there. That's also available from an embedded perspective in a Canvas app. So you can embed Power BI dashboards directly in the Canvas app. But not only there, you can also directly access Power BI through the Power BI interface. So if you really needed to, you could simply click through to that. Obviously, that'll show you the data that's relevant to you.
Yeah. So my question is more the fully immersive experience, not the, I can click out and see that in the Power BI client, but the actual, single pane of glass type of experience that, things like unified service desk type drive for, and also now in the modern UI that we're seeing. Is it there? Or, do you, for example, do you see it as the charting tool going forward to replace the traditional charts that have been in the platform for the last, eons?
No, I don't think so. I think it's going to complement them. My personal perception is that, Power BI will be the go-to tool, but I don't think we're going to be getting rid of the charts for a while. I think they're going to still be there for a long time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just my personal perception.
Yeah, no, good. So, what's the biggest benefit do you see of the switch to the Power Platform over what we've had in the past, over even, let's say, the XRM story?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. There's a number of benefits, right? I think the way I'm going to try and frame this in the best way I can, right? When you're utilizing Dynamics, you're not limited. I mean, obviously with the XRM side of things, you can build out anything you would like, but I think with Power Platform, you can have a deal of any size and implementation of any size, like absolutely tiny, using core fundamental pieces of the CDS, using just Canvas apps to access Office information. So your world expands when integrating to the rest of the stack. I think with Dynamics, from that perspective, and even the XRM side of things, the way in which you deal with like structure, process, etc., it's not limited, but you're kind of having to do that within what's available in the Dynamics stack. Now, the world is your oyster. I mean, if you decide one day, I feel like storing my Excel data in a more structured format, you can create entities in CDS, not have to pay the same licensing as Dynamics, and store your information in there. So I feel as if we're given more room to build at, I would say, it sounds terrible, but at less of a cost. And that's important, because what's happening is when you're going into, this is like the platform for everyone, whereas Dynamics was often perceived as the platform for medium to large organizations.
Yeah.
I always feel and also the one thing, I do love the fact that Dynamics is massively expandable, but in Power Platform, I kind of see it more so. And what I've found myself doing is having to take off my Dynamics goggles and put on my Power Platform goggles and starting to read the world in a bit of a different way and read customer problems in a different way, because I think with Power Platform, there's nothing you can't do. Whereas in Dynamics, you're sometimes having to bend around things. And the fact that it's massively integrated into the rest of the Office stack, not to say Dynamics isn't, but when you look at things like utilizing Flow within Power Platform, and Flow is not my strong point, but when you're utilizing things like Flow and Power Platform, I mean, you can connect to anything. You're basically applying automation to anything. Whereas just Dynamics, you're only applying automation to processes within Dynamics.
Yeah. It's so interesting
that's
because
my world.
Yeah, we'll just digress slightly and just touch on flow there, because Flow is interesting, but it's not Enterprise BPM, right?
No,
if you take an Enterprise BPM tool, it's been able to do this type of stuff for a very long time with potentially a lot more rigor. Typically you see it in banking scenarios, or really any type of transaction that lasts over, let's say, years rather than weeks, months, that type of scenario. Is it intended, do you think Flow will one day be an Enterprise BPM? Or, I know Logic Apps has that.
Yeah, I was going to say Logic Apps.
that kind of next layer below, but Logic Apps doesn't give us the UI necessarily that a BPM tool does, where, I've been involved with various tools over time, over the last 5 or 6 years, that are quite, drag and drop, building out your workflows, kind of similar to what we're seeing now in Flow. But do you see that there'll be a claim maybe at a future point in time that, hey, it is a BPM tool?
I kind of hope so. I mean, that's
same. I agree. Yeah.
I mean, that's where I think they're going with it. If you look at where we were in the early days of CRM Dynamics CRM 2013, when they first released that BPM engine with no real automated backing. And now there is becoming a large amount of automated backing. It's using Flow and Logic Apps, et cetera. I think it has to go that way. There's no ways it can't. But obviously with investment from Microsoft, we would assume that it would happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, true.
That was a cheeky statement.
Yeah. No, we'll see what happens. Interesting. So when you're engaging with the customer and you're talking, because you talked about taking those goggles off of Dynamics and now going, hey, the Power Platform is a separate thing in its own right. And I was just on a call this morning with a consulting client of mine, and I was just saying, hey, listen, forget about the actual first party app, because what they're built, is currently sitting in that environment and would work perfectly on the Power Platform. So therefore availing the P2 SKU as an example, rather than the pricing of the full Dynamics type first party apps. And so do you see this change happening already with your customer base, where you're going, hey, we're just going to put this headless technology, if you like, the Power Platform, where it's not truly headless because it has a full user experience, inherent in it. And actually just let's build your application, whatever it is, whatever you're trying to do, whether it's to, process some type of business initiative that you have. And let's not use those first-party apps because you're not doing sales necessarily, or you're not doing service. So are you seeing that real shift to actually, we're just going to start with the Power Platform and we're going to build a brand new application from scratch?
Yeah, for sure. And this is becoming quite important. And it's also giving the customers the concepts of the ability to expand, but not only using a partner, but on their own. So let me give an example, right? We implemented a solution at a customer 2 weeks ago. And the solution was primarily around asking questions to potential customers. Okay, so like a lead, essentially. Except they weren't a lead, because a lead is a very different thing to them. These guys were not even prospects. Okay, so thinking about it, and we could have built in a diagnostic or questions entity that allowed us to ask a bunch of questions, or them to generate their own set of questions, blah, blah, blah. And that would have given us a really quick win using the CDS, okay? Flow in the background, pushing off sort of emails and notifications directly to customer or user. And then not even a model-driven app. We probably didn't even need to do that, but it went that way, and I'll tell you where it went. But we ended up building up a Canvas app, right, that listed all these questions, and they could answer them and store them in the solution. And they were doing this using Excel, Notepad, and Evernote, right? So now the data's structured. Then we're like, well, actually what you're doing here is you want to associate this to a lead because you want to take the lead through a process. So then the solution grew from just CDS to, oh, we need a Dynamics 365 for sales license because you're using a lead. Awesome. So in we went, we built out a model-driven app. We didn't use the sales UI. We built out our own model-driven app, focusing on leads, accounts, contacts, what we called contracts, and then obviously these questions, okay? And then we associated their questions to the lead. Awesome. Surfaced that through the Canvas app, but then applied process using the model-driven app. So cool, we've gone to the trade show, asked this person a bunch of questions. They've respected that and said, yes, we are a lead. The lead gets stored in the database, getting taken through a process to qualified opportunity, essentially, in the standard terminology. So that deal built from being maybe one or two small little pieces of work into actually quite a fairly sizable piece of work.
Yeah.
Right?
So are you saying you built the lead entity yourself and on the Power Platform?
We ended up plugging in the sales license. Sorry.
Why?
And well, because they had the opportunity off the back of it, and that's a restricted entity.
So interesting. Is interesting yeah, it'd be interesting to know where that kind of concept of a restricted entity is going, or whether it's up for challenge, because we're already seeing companies like ForceWorks and Steve Mordew there challenging that restricted entity model, because I think a restricted entity is a throwback from yesteryear of the Dynamics being the only thing, and I think in the world of Power Platform that. I think that kind of concept may be open to challenge, I feel, slightly. But of course, it's a licensing thing and nobody really wants to go deep on these discussions, to some degree. But I don't know. Like, can the kind of concept of restricted entity exist when you're providing a common data model that says, hey, let's follow this model so we can all play well together, but hey, don't touch that one because that's our one? I don't know.
Yeah, sorry. The opportunity isn't restricted. I just have to take that back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no. We used it. There was another reason we had to use it. I think it was because that was the initial agreement with Microsoft.
Yeah.
We just built in the model-driven app underneath.
I thought the COLAC entities were all restricted.
As far as I know, they are. I mean, when you try and select a case, or it actually warns you. But I'm just taking a look at the restricted entity list now, and I don't actually see it in there.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and this is, I've had this conversation with Microsoft a couple of times. One of them was around field services and the bookable resource booking entity. And is that considered restricted? I mean, how does the whole and the work order, believe it or not, isn't.
Wow. Okay, that is interesting, because I would have thought that would be restricted, right? Because it's
so work order business process is restricted, work order details is restricted, but work order itself isn't.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that's the reason I get slightly confused about how this whole thing kind of fits together from a restricted entity point of view. It's like when you can create your own case entity, right? And you can create your own case entity, but it actually warns you when you select that entity in the common data service, so you're connecting to it through a Canvas app, it actually tells you this is restricted.
Yeah. It's interesting.
It's really interesting. But I think you're right. Like from a restricted entity point of view, I'm a little worried that, when you look at the list, it's kind of stuff like, is this, using this, what is considered multiplexing and what isn't? Can you create a case entity and call it a job?
Yeah, but it's irrelevant. As in, why can't you just call it a case? It's not rocket science. My gosh.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I think this whole restricted entity concept is probably going to have to fall away.
Yeah. Agreed. So it shall be interesting, as in to watch this space over time. So you've built this Canvas app that kind of fitted this customer need, and you've kind of plugged it into some of the first-party app platform as well. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much, yes. So there's a couple of things that they were using. Their goal is to use sort of the rest of the sales app over time, but we decided to stick with just the basics for now. And in the next phase, they'll be bringing in things like products, etc. But the great thing is that when we kind of plugged it in, it actually got quite quick user adoption. And the reason we decided to build our own model-driven app around it rather than using the basic D365 for Sales app was because they had user adoption issues before. And one of the things that Canvas apps and the model-driven apps gives you the ability to do is build from the ground up, not filtered down from an already existing application. So yeah, we used that opportunity to sort of refine the UI to the way we liked it, only select the processes we needed, only create the dashboards we needed, which is really awesome. And then obviously the Canvas app that we used in the background, and that was the primary mechanism to use this, was because they needed offline functionality. So yeah, the Canvas app provided that functionality for them. And then yeah, they're busy actually using it at the moment, which is very cool. And I've been watching leads go into the system, leads in inverted commas. And yeah, them running them through that process.
That's cool. Okay, because what I'd like to do is kind of, as we discussed, is playing the devil's advocate around this whole concept of Canvas apps, because like anything new and shiny, it gets a lot of press and it gets a lot of marketing and it gets a lot of demo. And when I say that it gets a lot of demo, is that, sometimes, and I've been doing this a long time, is that there's a thing called smoke and mirrors. And and it's part of what we do is infotainment, right? We show people how amazing it is, and we're never going to show the there's a cliff here, but hey, it's it's not here because of our smoke and mirrors type thing. So what I see is that, Canvas apps have been touted as this amazing thing, the citizen developer can, quickly jump in and quickly, and it's super easy. And I don't think it is super easy, and it's a bit more involved, because let me play the devil's advocate of the technology. And apart from being a good demo candy, which, PowerApps is amazing. I mean, I think I've seen some games you've created in it. You've, and those Serum guys have, sorry, what do you call yourself?
Dynamics guys. Those Dynamics guys. Yeah.
Those Dynamics guys. So, you've created, like an app bank and things like this. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, so Will's the game creator. Definitely, he's Will's the more squirrely one of us. So I focus more on the functional stuff. So I was the one that stuck the roadside assist, app in a day stuff together. Will's put together the Super Mario game and all of that. But it sounds silly, but it's a really awesome way to learn how Canvas apps work.
Yeah, so it's good for training, is what you're saying, right? And it's a good way for people to kind of get up to speed. But tell me, what I want to know is, when the rubber hits the road, what's the business application? I know, hey, it's a great tool to replace InfoPath and SharePoint, being that that's a dead product now.
That's a loaded question. That's the SharePoint piece is
What? You don't think InfoPath is dead?
No, InfoPath is dead. I agree.
And so what I'm saying is that Canvas apps are a good replacement of what InfoPath used to do, right? Which is
That's right. Yeah.
I'm working in a company. I have a business process like I need to have my mobile phone replaced. It's a company issued phone, and so I put up my request, and my manager has to approve it. My manager's manager has to approve it, the CEO has to approve it, and IT have to approve it, right? Let's say, as an example. And so that in the past would have been, hey, log into a SharePoint location, get the form that IT put up there, fill in your details, even though you're credentialed and it knew who you were if it had been designed badly, speaking from personal experience, and you'd go through and fill out. It could be a travel request, for authorization to take a flight if it's over the company limit or something like that. There's a lot of scenarios that InfoPath really addressed, and of course, I see Canvas apps being brilliant because it works on a mobile device, or it works on really any device, and is really effective at solving that problem. But that's not in the world we live in, right? This is the Dynamics world. Let's say the Power Platform world, where we've got this amazing, platform that was always from day one about structured data and structured way of interacting. So now we have Canvas apps. Tell me, what use cases is it solving in the Power Platform world rather than the SharePoint world?
Yeah, so I just want to raise something real quick. I remember having age-old discussions with folks around where your data should live. And when you speak to SharePointies, your data should live in lists.
Yeah.
When you speak to Dynamicsies, your data should live in structured data sources like Dynamics.
Yeah, but we know that SharePoint folks always have been quite wrong about this thing. So continue on.
Yeah. So that's the thing, right? It's the age-old debate. So I've recently engaged in a bunch of different use cases around what a Canvas app can do. Okay. Now I have a sort of weird rule around Canvas apps. I call them front office, where what happens is that it's kind of point and shoot. So you don't want to rebuild Dynamics into a Canvas app.
Right, correct.
Right. You don't want to surface 50 entities. Trust me, I've done this.
Yep.
You don't want to surface 50 entities through a Canvas app. It's a bad idea, right? So I call it the point and shoot app. So the one that I found, the one really great use case that I found is that, okay, and this is for now, is do you need offline functionality when doing A, B, and C? And that's not to say you should go and build out field services into a Canvas app. That's a bad idea because things like Resco replace that. So the one I found was you're at a trade show, you're going to be capturing leads. There's not always Wi-Fi connectivity. Create a nice, simple application that lets you capture leads really easily offline.
Agreed. Fantastic use case for it. Yep.
Yeah. So the second one I found, and man, I don't really want to bring this up, but okay, so let's just get the inspections one out of the way. That's really straightforward. Okay. But I normally focus on like per industry. So let's look at financial services. This is a good one. You want to be able to take, like an insurance company, you want to be able to take a person through a set of questions, step by step, asking them certain things about themselves, around policy, and it's fire and forget. I'm going to capture this stuff, push it back into the system, and that's that. Okay. Using the Dynamics client to do that can be a bit of a pain because you don't have that next type function, right? So the Canvas app does that. You can do that, right? In a sort of mini dialogue format. So I found that that's a pretty cool one. Guided diagnostics around households. So not really. Inspections is always good. So one of the ones we see in like social housing or local government is I'm going to go and take a photo of a street lamp. Like what happens is they have these inspectors going around or assessors, and their job isn't to inspect houses, but what they do need to do is when they drive past stuff that they know is wrong or know is broken or needs attention, take a photo, plug it in, GPS locations, send it off. That's again you're not replacing your field services app, you're enabling your field services app, right? Great one. Another one, event registrations and check-ins. Okay. A simple app, you're not using the Dynamics clients again. That's going to be too crazy. A simple app that lets you log people that have come in, do a barcode scan or a business card scan or something and check them into an event, right? Now, where I'm going with this, and there's a bit of a story, is that when you think around the difference between a Canvas app and I'm going to use the Dynamics 365 mobile application, right? Other than the fact that the offline functionality is there in the Canvas app, not yet in the D365 app, you need to think about the scenario, and it's got to be a proper use case. Like, does this person need to use a piece of paper to write this down? Is there a manual process? And also, are you collecting data, right? If you're collecting data, this gives you an epic mechanism to capture and store data really quickly in a structured format, right? Another one I've seen, which is really interesting, was actually meeting notes, right? Yeah, I thought that was actually a pretty good one. It looks a bit weird when you got your mobile phone out, but instead of going to the Dynamics app, you have a little meeting notes app.
Well, why wouldn't I just use OneNote?
Yeah, good shot. I think if you're using OneNote, obviously you can attach it directly to the core entity in Dynamics. I don't know. I think it's just an easier way, like user adoption, call reports type stuff. That's what I think will work really well. So, you've just had your meeting or you're in your meeting, capture a call report, fire and forget. These are the activities that I need to do. When you get into the office, because you've created those tasks or created those activities, you've then got like process associated to them. And man, I can waffle on for days about this, but there's so many. Facilities management, there's another great one, right? My printer is broken here. Scoot off, take a photo of the printer. It knows the location, it knows the barcode. Off it goes into Dynamics with the location and the job.
Cool. So if I were to categorize the two, I've only got two categories for what you've talked about. One is what I would call a Clipboard app. Basically, you're replacing the clipboard. Anybody that had a clipboard, which could be a form to fill out at a show, put your name and we'll catch you afterwards, like a sign-in sheet, Or as you know, if you take a look at your venue check-in type thing or event check-in, it's a sign-in sheet, right? Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Back in the day, built these kind of things, standalone on top of to run on iPads and things like this. Superb use case, and I see pretty much every scenario you gave, apart from the capture an incident, as a Clipboard app, right? They are inspections, they are ticking boxes, they are making a little comment, they are classifying some data. Fantastic. So let's call them Clipboard apps. And then this other one of kind of like field capture of information where you want some metadata strapped around it, right? So as you said, location, time, date, who did it, that type of thing, which is brilliant. There's a lot of use cases outside of those two use cases that will classify, particularly the Clipboard will classify a lot of business scenarios. Can you see any others?
I need to think. I'm trying to run through absolutely everything I've done in my head right now. There will be more.
I hadn't even thought of the concept of the Clipboard until as you were going through. I'm like, hey, this is somebody, I just saw somebody in a white lab coat writing things down on a clipboard, or making some checks or making some inspections. And it kind of fitted that scenario for me, an assessor, inspector, that type of thing. You add the camera mix and the metadata. That's the kind of answers a lot of other industry scenarios. But I wonder, are there others out there?
There's got to be. I like the concepts of an instructional app.
Yep. Okay.
So like
a training app.
Yeah. So I mean, in sort of any scenario, one of the ones that I saw, and I'm sort of recalling it now, one of our current customers, is that it's not really bringing in data, but it's providing data. So I mean, you could go into the website or whatever, or you could have a document on your phone, but it's more of a guided process around, if I want to. I'm just going to use this as an example. If I want to fix a car and this is the engine, this is what you need to do, type thing, step by step by step, which I haven't actually implemented anything like that, but it could be pretty useful.
That's an interesting use case, right? So you're saying, why don't you you could use the app to create, rather than your manuals being kind of static, you could actually use it to address a whole bunch of scenarios that were, you could take in your pocket, so to speak. Rather than, if you like, should I say there's some restrictions and just being PDF documents and how they format on mobile and things like that. Okay, so yeah, I think that's another valuable use case. I wonder if anyone's listening to this, that one person that is, if you've got any ideas around other use case, other use case classifications. So like the Clipboard, like the acquisition of field data, and then this one of training. I can just think of one more on the fly, and that's kind of like cataloging. So, I've got, a catalog, that might be updated in a back-end system and maintained by different departments, whether it be a part list or things like that. That might be another effective use case. And there's a lot of different cataloging scenarios depending on what industry one was in. So, yeah.
Is that not clipboarding though?
Well, no, a clipboard, right, is generally a pen and paper with, a pre-formatted form that I need to go through, where a catalog is like, a 10 kg manual full of stuff, if we're looking at the physical world, and that I need to grab some information. The other use case I thought was quite interesting is that when you're in a very large organization, is accessing to the right people, so kind of like, not customers, but let's say staff, and understanding how, you might need to engage with various staff. And I'm talking about, organizations with thousands of people, and being able to drill through and
Microsoft.
Yeah, like Microsoft. But, there's a lot of companies where, you don't know more than about 100 people in your business in a large organization, but there might be people. And, with some of the AI smarts that are coming out now, I think there's another use case or categorization there of searching data sets that you need on the fly, but you're not necessarily editing or changing or doing anything like that. That might be sitting, in the common data service as such.
Yeah, something else that was interesting. I can't remember who I was chatting to, but the concept of collaboration was brought up. around Canvas apps, and obviously, you've got Microsoft Teams, but I'm still trying to run that one through my head, because you're not going to build out a collaboration platform. That's a dumb idea.
Not
But
a messaging app or anything like that, right? There's such slick apps out there now already. I think that you'd be.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Teams.
Yeah.
We use it massively internally. But I'm wondering, obviously working with something like that. It's just a thought. There's so many, and I guess again, it's starting to think of the world a little differently around. Take off the Dynamics goggles, put on the platform goggles, and then you're going, well, okay, there's more to it than just this.
Okay, so my next devil's advocate question: you've built an app, and no, you didn't build it. A citizen developer built it. They built this app, and you are working in a company of 20,000 people, and they've asked for access to plug in and grab some data sets and fly a plane and things like that. And how do you maintain that code? How do you maintain that app? How do you make it enterprise ready?
God, this is the ALM stuff.
Oh, if you want to put a little title on it, go for it.
This is really difficult. It's something that I've actually been asking around, because obviously you've got VSTS and everything. For the rest of the bits and ball.
Yeah, the citizen developer doesn't have that though, right?
No, they don't. I call it App Armageddon, which is I've actually brought this up in previous podcasts done with Sean, where you give people access to just build tons of apps, and then it goes absolutely berserk. And there's no release management for this at all. There's no mechanism to maintain what people have done. So little Joe can go and build an app, and then just make it available for every user. And what if the data fields are incorrect? Or what if he's put in, what if he set the capture up incorrectly? And
exactly.
To me, there's no real management of how that is pushed. And I agree with you. It's a very good question. I don't know right now how I would do it. Quite honestly, at the moment, it is App Armageddon for me. Microsoft have to do something to make it better. They have to put some. I know there is some sort of security governance around how all of it works, but anyone can do it if they've got a PowerApp license.
Yeah. But if a citizen developer is going to build something great, who's going to give somebody CRUD access to a mission critical piece of data, right? They might give them R, retrieve.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they're not going to give them create, update, delete type access, to be a citizen developer when it's important data, or even non-important data. No one's kind of I don't know one IT manager that is going to go, heck, knock yourself out.
Okay, so this is where this part becomes interesting, because when you're talking about citizen developer, you're assuming that they have, that they are connecting to data sources. In my brain, I always feel like the term citizen developer is aimed at somebody that's like an office user that's going to be creating
an Access database.
Maybe a very simple. Well, you see, this is where it even gets more sticky. I see citizen development from a CRM world as a very different thing to CRM, D365 world, or even CDS world, in a very different way to the way I see a citizen developer in the Office 365 world, where, you're not in the CDS. I would really, really struggle to give somebody full access to write stuff to the database that's a citizen developer. I wouldn't see it that way. In fact, that would be a big no-no for me. But then the question begs, are you taking away from the concept of citizen development? And I don't think you are. I think citizen development is more around the ability to, generate these frames or templates that you can then build on, right? And that would be my thing. So I would say citizen development, you want to go for the ABCs of app building, right? You can build an app, you can write a flow, you can send an email. Even an email could be dangerous because you could be piling it off to some random person, right? The X, Y's, and Z's are where people like yourself, myself, are getting involved from an actual structural data point of view. If you're influencing structured data in the ABCs of app developments, you're doing a dangerous thing. That's just my opinion. And I still don't know how they plan to put the structure around it. Obviously I've seen the ways in which they're adding the Canvas apps to solutions, and you can structure a little bit more there. But if some rogue citizen developer with the idea of ideas of glory build an app, and somehow they've got right access into something they shouldn't, it's going to be absolute Armageddon.
Yeah, excellent. I agree. So something popped into my mind, so I'm going to just throw it out there for you, is Dialogues. We used to have dialogues.
Yeah, good old dialogues.
Do you think that the Canvas app could replace dialogues and be a use case replacement for dialogues in Dynamics?
Yeah, well, I'm building something at the moment. Yes. Okay, so the short answer is yes. I think so. The long answer is I'm actually building a diagnostics tool in Canvas apps that I haven't done this yet. So I'm going to try and plug it into CRM, well, to Dynamics CE. I don't know how it's going to work. I haven't gone down that road yet. I actually wanted to get it working for this weekend. I don't think I will, though. But yeah, I do think it's a definite option. I'd actually asked, I can't remember, it was another dialogue type ISV provider if they saw this as a threat, and they said no.
but that's I would expect every ISV to go no before they start looking for a new job. Tell that to CWR Mobility. It's not a threat.
Oh man, I remember those days. Well, look, I think it's going to be very cool. Like I said, I haven't explored how to do it yet. But hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I'll have a more rock solid response. But I'm excited about it. I think it'll be cool.
Awesome. If you had a crystal ball, tell us what the next 18 months are going to look like for Canvas apps.
Better CDS connection. I think the connector landscape will grow. And this is just me being selfish. Like I would
so
really
you're saying
love
this is what you want, not rather than what you think's going to happen?
No, I think it is going to happen. It has to. Yep. I think that the CDS connections will grow and there'll be more functionality. Just look at the way the lookups have gone. Like that's gotten a lot better. I think that the designer in the Canvas app is going to change. Yeah, it's more of a, okay, this is going to sound a bit random, but I remember building websites in Wix Website Developer, or Wix Website Generation Tool. Yeah, and for some reason, when somebody said to me, Canvas apps is a bit like the love child of PowerPoint and Excel, I was like, well, I kind of agree, but I think there's a lot more to it. I think that the designer needs to actually change. They need to add more controls, like a lot more controls. They need to give us better flexibility on also, there's loads. Even fonts and how those are selected. Like, I feel like there needs to be flexibility, better flexibility, even control. Like, I'm going to give you an example, man. The other day, I put a ton of code into an on select, right, on an icon. And what I'd done, I didn't think about this, but what I'd done just to experiment with something was I went to the navigate button on the icon and I changed it to just switch out to a different form to test. And obviously doing that, it replaces all the code. Yeah. Now, it sounds silly, but there's no warning to let you know you've done that. So if you do that, then go do a bunch of other stuff, there's only a limited amount of times that you can go back. So you lose all your code. Yeah. And obviously, doing this in dev, it's one thing, right? But it's easy to break stuff like that. Another example, we had a little one of the apps in dev, and the utilization of the extended CDS experimental connector had been turned on.
Yeah.
Lost functionality to all the lookups.
Wow.
Sorry, to all the option sets. Yeah, but it's silly little things like that where it's so easy to do something that breaks everything else. So I think personally in the next 18 months, there's going to be a load more control around how that stuff works and fits together. There has to be. I can't see them not doing that.
Well,
and then obviously things. Go ahead.
No, Karen.
So ALM as well. It's more control, security. They have to do these types of things. Better integration to things like Flow. Obviously also better integration to the model-driven apps from a Canvas app point of view.
So true.
But again, you see, I've been speaking primarily from a Canvas app perspective because that's the thing that people are interested in.
And that's the delta that that's new to us all, because model driven has been our bread and butter for 15 years, right? Exactly. That's pretty standard. Hey, it's been good chatting. We're going to get into some quickfire questions. I hear that you've flicked off, you've started a PowerApps podcast. You're running it 2 times a month. Is that right? Where you're just going to discuss all things PowerApps. And so when you say PowerApps, are you talking about Canvas and model driven under this moniker of PowerApps?
So we branded it badly. It should be Power Platform because we've been speaking about Flow as well.
Well, you can't use a Power 365 show because, mate, I've got that locked down.
Yeah, I've heard of the show before.
Hey, let's discuss some quickfire questions. What's the one thing that keeps you up at night?
So Canvas app mobile offline, and Will Dorrington, because he texted weird times.
Okay, come on. What's the one book you'd recommend to people and why?
Okay, Emotional Story, Scar Tissue by Anthony Kiedis, the singer of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, because genuinely it was the one book that really, really pushed me to like see things very differently within people and be less judgmental.
Yeah, interesting, because you're the second person over my year and a half of doing podcasting that has said that book.
Oh, it's a beautiful book. Genuinely, it's life-changing.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. What's hot on your reading or watch or podcast list at the moment? And it can't be anything technology related. Or, let's say it can't be anything Microsoft technology related.
Oh, even worse. Okay, I was going to give a shameless plug to Will and the FinOps podcast, and I just did.
Well done.
I don't actually watch a whole lot of TV. It's more in the background, but I've just finished watching the series called Rick and Morty. It's disturbing. It's awesome. Yeah. Reading, oh man, I haven't done any great reading lately. It's all been tech, which is a bit weird. That's bad, actually. You're forcing me to go and do something I enjoy, Mark. Yeah, so like series and stuff, Spartacus, that type of thing. I mean, it's always on in the background. I don't really watch. I'm always breaking stuff on.
So what ecosystem you're in, iOS or Android?
I'm an Android boy. If I touch Apple, I burst into flames.
So if you, me the other way around. If you were to go and look at battery utilization on your Android device, what would be the number one thing outside of the operating system using your battery? What would be the number one app? In other words, what's your most popular app that you're using all the time? LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah.
Mate.
Yeah. I know I'm a loser.
What, just dealing with all the Nigel Frank requests?
Yeah, it's me. Yeah, good old Nigel Frank.
Look at that. Finally, a recruiter got a plug on my show. How's that?
Hey, there it is, guys. You should delete this part.
Nah, who cares? What's your best purchase under $100?
My fire glazed drumsticks.
Wow.
And a ton of beer. Yeah.
Wow, fire glazed drumsticks. Do they not shatter?
Yeah, man. They're resilient, man. They're freaking brutal. I haven't tripped one, broken anything. They're pretty badass. I've got to be honest.
Wow. What's a passion of yours that you really share with people besides tattoos?
I love Lego.
Do you really?
I do, man. I got tons of it. I got tons and tons. It's a problem. Like, I actually sit with my kids and like, you know, they're very young, but we build the weirdest stuff.
What?
So
me too. I'm the heaps of Lego as well.
and Neil Benson, I know that.
Yes, so I'm not into it for like that, like branding and stuff like that. But yes, as in for owning it, and yes, different story. Very cool. Who would you recommend as a future guest for the podcast?
The other 2/3 of those Dynamics guys, Will Dorrington and Kyle Hill, definitely.
Will and Kyle.
That's it.
Will sounds like was it Will and Kate, a TV show back in the day or something? And
I'll tell you what, Mark, Will's a menace.
Yeah.
Carl's the restrained one out of the three of us.
Good to know. I'm sure I'm going to meet him shortly. Chris, it's been great having you on the show. Before you go, if people want to find you online, where can they find you?
So Twitter is Tattooed CRM Guy. LinkedIn is Chris Huntingford. Tinder is don't go to Tinder. I'm kidding. And obviously those Dynamics guys, just plug that into Google and you'll find Will, Kyle, and myself there. That's our community site that we run.
Hey, so I hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any ideas about how Canvas apps can be categorized for their various use cases, please let me know, because I think it will enable new ideas around use cases. For the full show notes or to discuss anything covered on the show, please go to nz365guy.com/52 and ciao for now.